I've made $50,000 last month for this client using solely Amazon PPC ads, and I'm gonna make even more money for him next month. In this video, I'll show you the framework how to maximize your profit using Amazon ads, what metrics to look at, and how most businesses get this wrong. Are you focusing on the ad ROAS, ACOS, TACOS, all these confusing metrics that's for someone just starting out, you have no idea what it is, all you care about is net profit, spending as little money as possible on ads. Well, that is a wrong approach for most products, and I'll show you why. This is a seller board metrics for last month for one of my clients. As you can see, it's 100K in sales, 15K in ad spend, which comes out to around TACOS of 15%. And if you don't know what TACOS is, it's simply a relationship of ad spend versus your total sales. So if you spend $1,000 on ads and you get 10,000 in overall sales, that's going to be 10% TACOS. And ACOS is a little bit different. So this is a relationship of ad spend and ad sales. So if you're spending $1,000 in that same ad spend, but you get 5,000 in ad sales, so that works out to be to about 50% ACOS. And always, the TACOS is obviously going to be much lower than ACOS unless you have a organic rank problem, but that's topic for another video. So how am I going to take this 50K and turn it into 75K next month, 100K, and so on? Are we going to spend less money on ads, or are we going to spend a lot more? And this is not common for every product, but with high margin products, usually that the more you spend, the more you make. And that TACOS number, and being like an industry standard of 10-15%, you'll make a lot more profit once you target that higher TACOS, and if it's something that client is comfortable with. And I'll show you how the formula works out. So this month, last month of April was at 15%. So again, what are we focusing to maximize the profit? We are focusing on the TACOS, and then the higher the number of TACOS, the more that overall ceiling sales potential, and the more profit you can make. Again, it is important to know that this scenario only works for high margin product. If you have a product that costs $5 to make and you sell it for $25 or $20, then you're probably going to be in that lower TACOS number where you're maximizing profit. But for products, for example, in this case, that costs $4 to make and say $50 or $60 to sell for, rare case scenario, the higher TACOS of 30-40%, it is maximizing that profit that you can make per month. So why are we not focusing on the ACOS? I want to demystify some misses. Or let's start with the first one, ROAS. Why are we not aiming for 10 ROAS on ads? I want to spend less money. I want to, get as many profitable sales as possible, spend as little on ads as possible. Well, that was the case exactly, in the past when Amazon was just easy place to make money without having to run ads. Now it's Wild West or Wild East, depending on where you are from. So 10 ROAS framework, it no longer works. And this is a common misconception with beginners and just many businesses who are just starting out on Amazon. That is not the way to go. And you want to invest in ads instead. Invest in ads more to establish organic rank, etc. Because this is what everyone's doing nowadays. The Amazon PPC is more important than ever nowadays, because this is the way to play the game, since ads are biggest revenue generator for Amazon. So this framework no longer works. But what works, and okay, I'm gonna mention the ACOS too. Same idea. Why would we not have 10% ACOS instead of 50%? Okay, I'm not sure why this is crossing this out, but you get the point. So the 10% or something ridiculously low also no longer works. But what works is, understanding the dynamics of your spend and how it affects your visibility, your organigram, understanding the big picture strategy that you have to invest in ads to show up on page 1, which in turn gets you more organic sales. So we are focusing on the tacos. And how does this look like for this specific product? So this is how the math works out. At this many sales, there is going to be a certain amount of units. And so what we have to do here is, let's take the net profit. Let's assume there was no ad cost. And we will just sum up the net profit with ads. And this just gives us profit per unit, regardless of ads, which is going to be constant. Some people say, okay, but if you sell more, we're going to have more returns. Yes, so it's not going to be completely constant, but it's a very accurate ballpark. So how are we maximizing this? What formula are we using? So here you go. Months of April. So 100K in sales, 14K in ad spend, and this is a net profit. Excluding, I think this is with ads. So this was 19.7 per unit profit, which is 15% tacos, like I mentioned. And then we can easily work out that without ads, it's going to be 25.6 constant profit per unit. So here are a couple of scenarios on how that looks like. For the next months, we could have a scenario where we target 20% in tacos. So this is what it's going to look like. Presumably, this relationship here is always going to be constant, under 20% tacos. So presumably this was the sales, this was the ad spend. So you see how the profit increases. Let's say we are going more aggressive, we talk to a client, we got a direction, hey, go ahead, I have lots of inventory, let's push the volume. So we'll check this out, 25%, 53.5 net profit. Just, for someone looking at this, it doesn't make sense. So it only works for high margin products, like strong brands, just focusing on volume. So what happens if you do 200K in sales and 60K in ad spend? So that's 30% tacos. So 61.5K net profit. Inversely, what if you go crazy and have 50% tacos? So this is the point of reaching diminishing return. So you have to establish that for your product. Overall, also higher tacos, it does mean better ranking. It also means higher overall sales ceiling. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. Most likely when we spend this much, and like I did say, okay, this number controls this dynamics, but most likely we will just get a lot more in sales, and it's going to be physically hard to even reach this ceiling. So I want you to be open-minded and don't have that notion, okay, if everyone is targeting 50% tacos, 10%, that works for me. Sometimes it doesn't, and you can make more money by just spending more on ads. Like in this example, I think the sweet spot is going to be around 30%. 35% is just running on the edge. And that relationship between risk-reward changes, it's shifting towards more risk. Because investing more in ads means, you're obviously using more cash flow to run the business. But if it's all coming back in net profit, that doesn't make a difference, right? You also have to account for your inventory. Is it a Q4 season where you have to keep units flowing fast because the storage fees are so much more expensive? Or is it a normal months where, maybe don't have as much stock and we have to focus on the lower investment? One more thing I want you to leave this video with is that yes, so investing more in ads does churn, more overall sales, sometimes more net profit, sometimes not. But what I also want you to experiment with is have a month, 1 month, where you target 15%, right? And say you watch this video and then next month you do 30%. So what you're always going to notice is that your organic ranking will improve drastically. And then next month, see if you can take this back to 20% tacos. And what happens is that you'll usually make more profit. because that second month was like so aggressive, so you establish that baseline. But it's something to always test and experiment with. So to sum up, pay attention to your metrics. Every product is unique, every business is unique. For subscription-based businesses, the whole scenario is different, where we're sometimes investing at a loss for some of my clients just to grow that SNS count, like subscribe and save count. For other businesses, like cheaper products, we want to stay as lean as possible. Maybe have a 10% tag as goal at most. But again, it's very product specific. Low margin products tend to work better at lower tacos. High margin products work better at a higher tacos level. So just keep that in mind, look at your metrics, and I highly recommend you download Sellerboard just for better analytics. Until the next video.